Bill Spencer stood at the edge of Liam's hospital bed, white-knuckled fingers curling around the metal railing as he watched the steady, fragile rise and fall of his son's chest under the harsh glare of the emergency room lights. And in that silent vigil, he felt the full weight of every ruthless boardroom battle, every corporate coup, every savage tagline he had ever whispered into Liam's eager ear. The power plays that he had once extolled as rites of passage for the next generation now revealed themselves as nothing more than cruel games whose losers paid in blood and fear. He remembered the nights he'd sat Liam down and preached about domination, never show weakness, crush the competition. He'd dangled promises of inheritance, of unassailable influence, convinced that Liam's ambition would forge him into a titan. Yet all that ambition had led Liam into the crosshairs of Luna Nozawa's vengeance, and now Bill's own flesh and blood lay battered by a bullet meant for Steffi, his bright, courageous daughter-in-law whom he loved almost as fiercely as his son. Tears blurred his vision as he recalled the moment he learned that Luna had been released from prison thanks to his own lobbying efforts, an act he had defended as merciful, a triumph of compassion over punishment, only to discover that his mercy had been repaid with violence. How many tragedies had he sown in the name of power, only to reap this harvest of devastation? In the hush of that fluorescent-lit room, Bill made a decision that both horrified and galvanized him. He would spare no expense to secure the absolute best treatment for the one person who, even in her darkest hours, still held crucial knowledge. Sheila Carter Sharp. Once the most feared villain in Los Angeles, the architect of so many schemes and so much heartbreak, Sheila had emerged from the operating theater pale and battered but alive, her spine jeopardized, her future uncertain. Law enforcement believed that Sheila, who had confronted Luna that fateful afternoon to wrest the gun from the unstable young woman's grip, held the key to unraveling the conspiracy behind the shooting spree, including evidence that Luna had acted not alone but as part of a deeper vendetta. Bill knew that only Sheila, with her intimate familiarity with Luna's psychology and the dark network she navigated, could point the police to the hidden caches of communication logs, the anonymous bank transfers that funded Luna's escape, and the secret drop points where the weapon itself had changed hands. And so, with a shudder that ran through his chest, Bill reached for his phone and arranged a clandestine meeting with the hospital's administrator, invoking every ounce of his influence and every dollar in the Spencer coffers to underwrite Sheila's transfer to the most advanced, secure rehabilitation center in the state, complete with private rooms, round-the-clock medical surveillance, and a legal agreement that in exchange for this extraordinary upgrade, he would be granted unfettered access to Sheila's cooperation in the ongoing police investigation. He told himself it was strategic, that saving Liam required sacrificing nothing more than his pride, but beneath that rationalization lay the deeper truth. He was desperate to restore order to a world he had upended by his own hubris. The night air was cool as Bill slipped into Sheila's private room at the exclusive Pacific Crest Medical Institute, where the former Queen of Chaos lay in a sleek hospital bed surrounded by an array of monitors and 4 drips. Her hair, once jet black and styled to imperious perfection, was now flattened against her skull, and her face, etched with new lines of pain, was framed by stark white bandages. Bill pulled up a chair and sat across from her, meeting her cloudy eyes with a resolve he had not felt since Liam's first day of chemotherapy years ago. "Sheila," he began, voice low, "I'm putting up the money for the best medical team money can buy. You'll have access to specialists, physical therapists, any treatment that can help you regain movement. But I need something in return." Sheila's brow furrowed, confusion and pain wrestling for dominance in her expression. Bill continued, "I need you to make a deal with the district attorney's office. Help them trace Luna's steps, her communications, her financial trail, the people who helped her. You know where to start. Without your testimony, Luna might slip through the cracks again, and another gun could be in someone else's hand next. Sheila's gaze flickered, a glimmer of the old survival instinct flashing through the haze of her injuries. She reached out a trembling hand and closed it around Bill's. "I owe it to you," she rasped. "And to Liam. I'll tell the truth, everything." Bill nodded, relief and guilt warring within him as he realized that he had just bargained with a former enemy to save his son, a transaction that diced morality into something unrecognizable. But Bill's secret pact with Sheila was not the only reckoning on his horizon. The next morning, as he returned to Spencer Publications' sleek 60th floor offices, his steps heavy as he replayed every childhood conversation with Liam, he found his sister Katie waiting in the executive boardroom, her face drawn with a mixture of concern and wounded anger. Katie, the moral compass of the Spencer clan, had long questioned Bill's relentless pursuit of power. Now, with Liam's life hanging in the balance, she demanded answers. "How many more blessings will you turn into curses, Bill?" she asked, voice quiet but firm. "You freed Luna, and now your own son is fighting to breathe. And what about Sheila? Are you really going to bankroll her care when she could send your enemies to prison with a single confession?" Bill placed his briefcase on the polished mahogany table and exhaled shakily. "I made mistakes, Katie. I thought I was doing good, giving someone a second chance. But I was naive. And now Liam is paying the price." Katie's eyes glistened. "Your second chances always come at someone else's expense. At what point do you see the wreckage you leave behind? Our family, our son, our entire legacy, are we worth more than your pride?" The words sliced through him sharper than any legal deposition. In that moment, Bill realized he could no longer hide behind corporate facades or boardroom triumphs. He looked to Katie, seeing the weight of every feud he had stoked, every scandal he had weathered, and the barely masked grief in her expression. "The Spencers have paid dearly for my ambition," he admitted, voice breaking. "Liam, Hope, and now you, I've risked you all for battles that meant nothing." Katie reached across the table, her hand resting gently on his. "Then it's time to choose differently. Help your son survive, yes, but help yourself too. Make this right." Bill swallowed hard and nodded, understanding that his path forward lay not in dominance, but in humility, the same humility that would force him to negotiate with Sheila Sharp, to face Katie's disappointment, and to own every decision that had brought them to this precipice. As the final rays of afternoon sun filtered through the office windows, casting elongated shadows across the gleaming floor, Bill felt the full weight of his legacy pressing in from all sides. He would stand at Liam's bedside, a man stripped of pretense, pledging to undo as much damage as he could. He would hold to his bargain with Sheila, seeking redemption in the courtroom rather than the boardroom. And when the time came, he would confront Luna Nozawa's cold-eyed vengeance with the truth that only Sheila could provide, even as he grappled with the knowledge that his own benevolence, his desire to champion mercy over retribution, had nearly destroyed his family. But most of all, he would face Katie's silent plea for integrity, determined to rebuild the Spencer name not on the ashes of conquered foes, but on the fragile bonds of forgiveness, accountability, and the fierce, unguarded love that had brought him to his knees at his son's hospital bed. For in the end, Bill understood that the greatest power he could wield was not the power to crush his enemies, but the power to protect those he loved and to admit, at last, that he had been wrong. Bill Spencer emerged from the boardroom a different man than the one who had entered it only hours before, his broad shoulders still bearing the imprint of Katie's hand and his heart weighed down by the promises he had made. He had instructed the hospital administrator to fast-track Sheila's transfer to the high-security medical rehabilitation center in Stockton, and within the hour, he found himself seated in a somber private conference room with the district attorney, his eyes never leaving Sheila's gaunt form as she leaned forward in her wheelchair, her voice faint but unwavering as she recounted the intricate web Luna Nozawa had spun over months. How the embittered art student had cultivated allies in the underworld of LA clinics, funneled money through offshore shell accounts, and stockpiled weapons with the intention not only of confronting Steffi Forrester, but of exacting revenge upon every member of the Spencer and Forrester clans who had ever doubted her. Sheila spoke of midnight text messages from an anonymous number, Raven, of clandestine meetups in abandoned warehouses where Luna had traded confidential Forrester designs for the promise of violence, and of the chilling final conversation in which Luna had confessed that, if Sheila did not aid her in dismantling the Forrester empire, she would orchestrate a bloodbath Hollywood would never forget. Each revelation landed on Bill like a sledgehammer, propelling him to release the DA's office from any procedural delay. Every shred of evidence Sheila provided would be admissible, every testimony expedited, and in exchange he would personally cover the costs of Sheila's round-the-clock care. News of Sheila's cooperation leaked almost immediately, and within 24 hours the press dubbed her the redemption witness, plastering her pale, bruised face across every media outlet. Reporters camped outside the Stockton facility, flashing cameras as Sheila emerged for physical therapy sessions, her once formidable posture reduced to a tentative lean on her therapist's arm. Yet, despite her frailty, she carried herself with an unyielding defiance, her voice steady even as tears streaked down her cheeks when she described the moment Luna had pressed the gun to Steffi's forehead and then turned the barrel on Liam. Meanwhile, Bill faced a fresh storm at Spencer Publications. Shareholders demanded answers about his decision to fund Sheila's care, and tabloids questioned whether his desperation to save his son had clouded his judgment. Katie, ever his moral barometer, stood at his side through every press scrum, her presence a reminder that family loyalty could not excuse reckless decisions. She confronted him beneath the gleaming chandelier of his penthouse apartment that evening, voice trembling but resolute as she challenged him to use his newfound humility to rebuild the Spencer name on integrity rather than influence. Bill placed a hand over hers, the scars of their shared loss tightening his chest, and vowed that once Liam was safe and Luna was behind bars, he would make restitution not just in words, but in deeds. Restructuring Spencer Publications' charitable arm to fund rehabilitation programs for wrongfully paroled inmates and medical care for their victims, a pledge he knew would cost him millions, but might at last begin to heal the wounds he had inflicted. Back in the hush of the hospital corridor, Finn Finnegan stood vigil beside Liam's bed, his gloved hands clasped tight around Steffi's as they watched monitors flicker and pulse. Word had reached them of Sheila's deposition, of the trove of evidence that had unraveled Luna's defense and sent detectives racing to execute search warrants on the artist's loft, seized emails, hidden safes stuffed with dollar bills, and a cache of incriminating recordings in which Luna vowed to teach them a lesson in pain. As nocturnal rain tapped at the windows, Finn allowed himself a weary smile. His mother's sacrifice might yet save his husband's life and secure a verdict that would banish Luna from their lives forever. Steffi, her golden hair flattened by grief and exhaustion, leaned into Finn's warmth, her voice a whisper of determination as she promised to stand by Bill in making good on his promise to protect their family legacy. The solemn hush was broken by the soft beep of a monitor alarm, and as Finn rushed to adjust Liam's foreline, a single flutter of consciousness stirred behind Liam's closed eyelids. Steffi squeezed Finn's hand, hope blooming in her chest. A faint squeeze of her own returned the promise that the battle for their family, waged in hospital beds and courtrooms alike, had not been in vain. By sunrise the city would awaken to headlines announcing the arrest of Luna Nozawa on multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit violent crimes, and illegal arms possession, brought down by the very woman she had once sought to destroy. Bill would stand with Katie on the courthouse steps, his confession of guilt over his prior misjudgments tempered by the resolve to see justice served not with vengeance, but with accountability. Finn and Steffi would escort Liam back into their lives, this time with a bond tempered by near tragedy and fortified by the knowledge that love, even when tested by betrayal, bullets, and buried secrets, could withstand the fiercest storm. And Sheila Carter Sharp, once again at a crossroads between redemption and relapse, would find herself at the center of a redemption arc unlike any she had ever scripted, her fate bound to the very family she had tormented. If she regained movement, if she found the humility to atone before the world, she might finally earn the forgiveness she had craved for decades. In the end, the bold and the beautiful would remind its audience that power and ambition can both build and destroy, that every act of mercy carries a price, and that the only true victory lies in the courage to admit one's mistakes, to protect those we love even when we have failed them most, and to forge a new legacy from the ashes of our own hubris.